Where are you now, Filipo?
I'm in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh. Okay.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is I'm recording this as a Learning Together episode 359 episodes, and I'm talking here with Filipo Lubua.
Yes.
He is in Pittsburgh right now, and he wants to interview me about his for his PhD research. He's a PhD student at Ohio University, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Greg Kessler is one of your advisors?
Yes.
Yeah, Greg was just here in this very house
Oh, wow.
not long ago. So,
Wow.
kind of a mess, but
Oh,
once you get into it, it's quite homey.
wow. So was it last week when he was in UAE?
Yeah, I think, was it last weekend or the weekend before? Yeah, he gave a talk here.
Wow, that's good. You guys were lucky to be in that huge conference, I think.
Yeah, it was. It used to be called TESOL Arabia, but TESOL Arabia had to disband, so I couldn't get a permit from the Dubai authorities. So they started a new conference, but it's an annual conference in the United Arab Emirates.
Okay. But are you based in Dubai or in Saudi Arabia?
No, I'm in United Arab Emirates, and the conference was in Dubai, and I'm in Al Ain, which is about an hour and a half drive. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Not too far.
No, not too far. Small country. The furthest place is 3 or 4 hours from here.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Well, actually, you could go out west toward the desert. It gets a little longer out there.
So Dr. Kessler is my advisor and he's my chair. He's the chair of committee. So, so when I was talking to him about finding people suitable participants for this topic, he mentioned a few people to me, and I looked at your profile and realized that you are really an entrepreneur. And of course, there's something that we're gonna talk about a few minutes later. And but I'm so glad that you are willing to talk with me. Like you said, it's gonna be a conversation. We're learning from each other.
Yes.
And from that, I hope the whole community is also going to learn from our conversation.
Yeah. Yes. One more thing I always tell people when I do recordings, the date. It's the 20th of March, 2018.
Yes.
And as I said, I'm talking with Filipo Lubua about entrepreneurialism in CAL, Computer System Language Learning. And as Filipo pointed out, it's not really, an entrepreneur isn't necessarily someone who makes money, but someone who, I guess, you tell me, what is your definition of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be making money. Entrepreneurship is about making value. So it could be monetary value, it could be social value, anything like that. We have people in social entrepreneurship, and they don't necessarily make any money, but they are making a change in the society.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing.
Have you seen the TESOL, the TEFL, I guess, encyclopedia that Greg is editing? He's one of the editors. Have you seen that?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I have an article in that about webheads. Are you familiar with webheads?
With what?
Webheads.
No.
Webheads in action.
No.
That's probably how I got started, really. Well, I suppose webheads was how I got started in 1998.
I only saw that on I think one of your websites. And I was wondering what that is, and I thought it was just some kind of web hosts.
Well, yes, it started out. I was working with someone named David Wynette in California. I was in California. Actually, I guess I should go back. I had been teaching English by then for about 20 years. And I was in Oman teaching English there for 10 years.
Right.
And so from Oman, I went to California, and I started working for a software company. But because I had been teaching for so long, I really missed teaching. The software was English language software, but I was working on the production side, and so I missed teaching. So I got involved with something that David Wynette was starting up. About then, we're talking 1997, 1998, and the internet was just coming online, and David was right at the cutting edge of the internet. And he started a group of, he found teachers who would get in email contact with people who wanted to learn English and then set things up. And so I started an email class, but that didn't go over very well. And somebody set up a web page for it, one of the students did. And then I got so interested in that, I learned HTML. And from there, David started playing around with an avatar-based site called the Palace, and the classes started meeting in the Palace. The students kind of got into it. I butted up against two other teachers in the Palace. We had classes just 30 minutes apart, and their names were Michael Coughlin and Maggie Doty. And we sort of combined our classes and our students. And they started sending us pictures, and I put them up on the web, and that's how I called it Webheads. Well, actually, David called it Webheads. I was in chat with him one time. He said, we're just a bunch of Webheads, and that name stuck. And so I called it Writing for Webheads, and that was it was getting students to write just by getting them interested in communicating. In fact, they wrote and they spoke. They sent us recordings. We really got to know each other. It was very social. We're talking last century. I think Facebook came along in 2006. Moodle maybe 2002, something like that. Martin Dugumas, one of his innovations was putting pictures, thumbnail pictures, in the chats in the Moodle. And of course, Facebook did that with a vengeance there. But back in that time, I had a panoply of a web page with all the students' pictures, and we just kept adding to them. It started out with 2 or 3 pictures, and then it's kind of went in multiples. That would be 9 pictures there. All of a sudden, it's we didn't have 80, but at least we had like 29, 39. So we had just a wall of faces at a time when that wasn't the usual thing. So.
But you mentioned that you worked this company. It was some kind of software company, right?
Yes.
So do you have a background like in software engineering or?
Let's see. How did I get into that? When I got. Okay, I know. I'll tell you exactly how I got into that. I was in Saudi Arabia from 1976 to 1981, and somewhere around 1979, someone brought a computer down into the place that I taught English, and it was part of the computer department. It was a console that was hooked up to a mainframe somewhere, and it sat there, and I just went down and one day and I started just playing around with it, see what it did. I just poked at it. I didn't know anything about it. And the director passed by and he saw me there, and so he asked me to start a group of teachers to create software for it, and that of course was done through the IT department. But that's how I got into it. I just happened to be spotted playing around with the keys, just like this, So and then I organized a group of teachers to create software. Language learning software for it. And then when I left there, I went to the University of Hawaii and got my MA. And my MA was in computer-assisted language learning because I was getting very interested in it at the time. And so that's where I went to Oman. And in fact, because of my interest in computer-assisted language learning, I went there and worked for 10 years as a CAL coordinator. And from there, I went to, that was my background. You asked about my background. That was it. I just learned a lot about computers by doing things. And I got the MA with a focus in computer-assisted language learning. So I was always playing with that kind of stuff. And
how about, you said something about your undergraduate. Was it in language learning as well? That's what you said?
Undergraduate, believe it or not, was in biology. So
oh, wow.
I got a BS in biology.
Wow. That's really good. I like the differences.
Yeah, it all helps because, you know, it had a strong background in chemistry and physics and things like that. So,
so how did you end up liking language teaching?
Okay. Back before any of this, when I was just out of my undergraduate, I traveled for a couple of years, and my uncle was a USIA, I can't remember what they used to call it. It's the U.S. Information Agency. And he was a language teacher. He'd been teaching languages for the U.S. government for some time, and he invited me to come out to Morocco to stay in his house for as long as I liked. And I just saw the way he lived and learned. I got interested in language teaching from that. I just thought it was a viable lifestyle, and it seemed to suit me, and I liked to travel. So when I went back home to Texas, I was looking for something to do, so I went down to the university, and there was a English language services language school there. And I just walked in and said, you know, I'd like to teach here if I can. And they said, oh, okay, come back tomorrow. So I go back tomorrow, and then they say, here's your class. I said, huh? What do I do? So someone took me aside and gave me the 1 hour MA and told me, okay, this is what you do. And then I went into the class the next hour and took it from there. And then from there, where did I go from there? I think, I went to Saudi Arabia from there. I went to a TESOL conference, and I got a job in Saudi Arabia with a BA teaching English. And from there, I went and got my MA in Hawaii. And I've been in the field ever since.
And when was that, when you started teaching English? Which year was that?
1976 was my first teaching job.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I went to Oman, and I got my MA from 1981 to 83. Then I worked on the Big Island of Hawaii, sort of running a language school, and that place they didn't have any technology. They had very little technology, so I got them to budget for some Apple computers, and they brought those in. And then I said, okay, I need software, and they said, well, you didn't budget for software. I said, oh, you didn't tell me I had to budget for software. But anyhow, so that I was going to Apple clubs in Honolulu, and I learned they had a lot of programs. They were sharing programs back then, and you could get into the code, and they had things like word games, you know, and then I would just go into the code and I'd change to where it would become an English language word game. It would suit my purposes, and I found free software, and I learned basic from doing that, and then, you know, so then actually in Oman, I was making, with a programmer, developing a suite of software programs that we developed, making, we called it super close, text tanglers, things like word manipulation software. And we actually got some of it published. We were going to TESOL conferences, and I got it published. And I suppose that's how I segged from Sultan Qaboos University in Oman to California Software Company.
So before you started working in California in a software company, you didn't have any formal training. I think you mentioned that you had formal training of computers and language learning, right? Computer systems and language learning.
Well, I got my MA developing software a program to teach using Apple Pilot.
Okay.
It was a program that